Hi, everybody. I'm Sandy Myodo Gougis with Profound Way, and I'm here to give you a few meditation tips today for people who have a neurodivergent brain. Now, that's the word that's being used. I fall into this category. Personally, I embrace it. I don't mind being divergent from the masses. Like, woohoo, that fits my rebel tendency. But if it seems like less than polite to you, then maybe think of it as neurospicy or atypical. Because let me tell you, there's no such thing as typical. And I'll show you what I mean by that. I have had dogs all of my life. The most commonly occurring color among all of my dogs is white. I've had more white dogs than I have brown or black or mixed colors. Most white, it's the most common color. And among my dogs, most of them have been under 15 pounds. So that would make my typical dog a white dog under 15 pounds. And yet I have never owned my own typical dog. I've never had a white dog under 15 pounds. And if you add more attributes to that, like do they have ears that stick up or ears that hang down? Do they have curly Q tails or straight tails, long coats or short coats? When you add all of these different attributes up, you're not going to have the typical dog. There's no such thing. And I've managed to show that with only 2 attributes. So when we're talking about typical, neurotypical brain or atypical, look, normal is a setting on a dryer. Okay? So everybody is unique and we're all a little bit different in different ways. Fortunately, human beings have been meditating for thousands of years, and so they've come up with a lot of different varieties. So if you fall into that neurodivergent banner, which includes things like autism, including Asperger's autism, anywhere on that spectrum, ADHD, or my own neuro flavor of choice is dyslexic. So if you are dyslexic like me, and I'm also have dyscalculia, I think that's what they call it. So not only do I invert letters and sometimes whole syllables and sometimes entire words, but numbers. And I used to be a bank teller. So high functioning dyslexic. I was just able to slow down and figure out what I needed to do. I was very fortunate in that way. But if you are identifying with one of these conditions, or even if you're not, if you just have a brain that likes to race around like a drunken monkey leaping from branch to branch, which the Buddha said is all human brains, by the way, then here's some meditation tips for you. I have 3 of them, okay? We're going to talk a little bit about movement meditation, grounding, and breath work. So let's start with movement. For those of us whose brains are atypical, virtually everyone, then it's easier for us to focus if we are more embodied. And you'll notice all 3 of these things I'm going to talk about right now deal with the body and deal with really focusing on the body instead of just sitting and letting everything empty out. Sometimes that can come later in the same session once we've spent a little time working with the body and calming the mind down. So what do I mean by movement? Well, one of my favorites is yoga. And not just because I used to own a yoga studio, but because yoga can be very slow moving. It can also be pretty quick, like Ashtanga, but for meditation, a very slow moving yoga would be really good. Or even yin yoga, where you're holding one particular pose or asana for several minutes in order to release the fascia. Don't try that at home unless you know what you're doing. You've had some training, okay? And with yoga and anything else, it's good to work with a teacher, or you can find some great stuff online that you can follow along with if you're new to yoga. So be careful. It should never hurt. Yoga should not be painful, at least not the type we're talking about. We're not doing it for exercise. We're doing it as a focus for the mind. So keep that in mind if you try yoga for meditation. Another movement-based meditation is dance. And that can be slow. It can just be swaying in your kitchen, or it can be ecstatic dance where you've got some fantastic world music going that people in other cultures dance to, and you're trying that out. Or it can be something that's homegrown that you enjoy, something that's in your own culture that you like to move to, something that just every time you hear it, you can't sit still type of thing. And then let that be your meditation. Stop thinking about other things. Put all of your attention into the motion and perhaps your breath, if you choose. So those two are really good for movement meditation because you're really moving. And again, just don't let the mind wander, or I should say when it does wander, because it's going to, just bring it back to what you're doing, the dancing or the yoga. And a final movement-based meditation you can do is a body scan. Now, you might have heard of body scans before, and you're thinking, well, that's not active. Well, we're going to make it active. We're going to make it an active body scan. How do you do that? Well, let's say you're going from the bottom up. It doesn't matter which way you go, by the way, top down, bottom up. But in this example, we're going to go bottom up. So you're going to start with your toes. And you're really going to feel your toes, but not just that. You're going to wiggle your toes. So while you're concentrating on any particular part of your body and you're noticing that, you're going to move it or just tense and release. Tense and release a few times, depending on what the part of the body is. So that's how you would make that an active body scan. And that can be very, very relaxing, and it can take your full concentration, your complete attention, and that makes it a good meditation. All right. So those are some examples of movement-based meditations. Now let's talk about grounding. Grounding also means being more embodied, getting out of the head and into the body, out of the mind into the body, however you want to conceptualize that. And a really good way of doing any type of grounding exercise is using your senses. In Buddhism, we count thinking as one of the senses, but for our purposes right now, we're not going to count thinking. We're just going to count the other 5 that we learned in elementary school, okay? So as you're sitting there and your mind is wandering and you're like, what do I do? Okay, let's take a moment to ground. First, what are 5 things that you can see? So look around and see what are 5 things that you can see. I can see my rose garden. I can see my lemon tree. I can see my dog. So come up with 5 and just note them. Notice what they are. Then what are 4 things that you can hear? So you might have to really be aware, okay, of what those are. Like, I can hear the hum of my computer. I can hear my little dog moving around as she settles. And maybe there aren't 4 things that you can hear in that moment. That's okay. Just acknowledge that. Oh, I can only hear 2 things. Okay, what's next? Let's see. What can I feel? And you can reach out and touch things and say, okay, here's, again, my dog, poor dog. She's getting a lot of attention. She does not mind. And what are 2 other things that I can touch and that I can feel? And how do those things feel? And then what are 2 things that you can smell? Maybe you're not aware of any smell. So, okay, fresh air, just clean, fresh air. That's all I can smell. That's fine. Or you might want to get up and go smell something. Both are fine. And then can you taste anything? Is there something you can taste? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe the toothpaste is still there. Maybe you've got a cup of coffee and you have a sip of that. However that works. So grounding, this little practice, can be a little mini meditation on its own. It can then be used to go deeper into another type of mindfulness or meditation, or that can be the complete practice, and that's absolutely fine. So we've talked about movement-based meditations, we've talked about grounding, and now we're going to talk about breath work or pranayama. That's a ancient tradition, comes from the yoga tradition, and it is not actually translated correctly when we say breath work, because prana means a lot more than breath. It means more like life force. So, but it deals with the exercises that we do deal with the breath. So that's why it's gotten translated that way. There's a number of different ways you can regulate your breath. That's what we're talking about, rather than simply observing it like you would do in mindfulness. That might be a little too passive for the neurospicy brain. It might want a little bit more involvement. So we can regulate the breath or control it in some way or notice it more. And one way you can do that is what's called diaphragmatic breathing. And that is, we're going to really use the diaphragm, and you're going to notice the diaphragm. So I'm going to stand up and attempt to show you this, but you want to put your hands below your ribs. My ribs end right here, so put your hands below your ribs. As you breathe in, feel the diaphragm expand. So you can see how mine moves quite a bit, and yours will too. You can do that sitting down. I just stood up to show you on the camera. But that way you can really be more in tune with your breath. You're noticing it more than just the normal sensations of the breath coming in and going out. You're also now experiencing it with your hands in a more tactile way because your hands are on your body. And if you do it in front of a mirror, you can watch that. And when I first start that, I'm always a little bit amazed at my body. It's like, wow, how much the diaphragm moves, how big that thing is inside the body cavity, and what a change it makes, how much space it allows us to fill up with air. It's just a remarkable thing, and it gives me an appreciation for my body. So diaphragmatic breathing is a really simple, I won't say easy, but simple entry point into breath work. And anytime you're regulating your breath or controlling your breath, then that is breath work. And in a previous talk, I have shown you how to do box breathing. You might want to go back and look at that or listen to that again. But it's breathing in to a count of 4, holding the breath for a count of 4, exhaling for a count of 4, and suspending the breath for a count of 4. It makes a little box, 4 sides, or a square. You call it either one. And that's very nice also for a good, simple starting point for breath work. So let's review. We've talked about movement meditation, yoga, dance, and an active body scan. We talked about grounding meditations using our senses, such as the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique. And we've talked about using breath work like diaphragmatic breathing or box breathing. So if you, like me, identify as neurospicy and your brain doesn't necessarily want to conform to what everybody else says is normal, sitting on a dryer, then please try these out and see what you think. And I would really love to hear from you. So give me your comments below if you feel so inclined, and tell me, have you tried some of these? What do you think? Do you have other suggestions for people who are neurodivergent, whether you are or not? Have you tried something? Have you heard of something that you think might be useful? Please share and let's have a conversation about this. So thank you, everybody. Have a great week. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.